So it's 7:30. We should start now. I think there will be more persons who will come. Apologies, we were meant to have the program at the clubhouse below, but if you were walking past, you would have heard that loud disco sound. And I think it would have been, they were having some disco, Maharaj.
Ooh.
And it was really loud, and it would have really disrupted Maharaj's lecture.
I would have walked out.
It would have disrupted the entire proceeding. So that's why, Maharaj, we thought we have it
Well done.
in the
Well
house.
Thanks to Mataji.
Yeah, so before we start the program, we
Who's home
must
are
thank Sandeep Prabhu and Mataji.
No.
Mataji,
They opened the house.
they opened the house.
This is your home.
Yes,
Yes.
Maharaj. It wasn't planned, it was very last
Unplanned,
minute.
We don't mention it's okay.
And you know, they have a very big heart and they have opened their house, so very, very grateful to them. And before Maharaj starts, I think it's in right order that we introduce Maharaj. But when I look around, I think I'm preaching to the choir. Everyone knows Maharaj, but for those of you who are here for the first time, Maharaj is a very senior disciple of the Divine Grace P.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who is the founder of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Maharaj has been on this path of Bhakti Yoga, spiritual life, for more than 5 decades, 50 years. For us to hold a job for 5 years, it's very difficult, right? But Maharaj has been on this path, one path, determined for 50 over years, not just as a seeker for himself, but he has been traveling all over the world for 5 decades, inspiring so many living entities to take up the path of spirituality. He's traveled the corners of the world. He's traveled to Europe, he's traveled the American region, he's even traveled to very difficult regions like China to preach. And as he's traveled, so many persons have become inspired by him, and they have also become his disciples, because he's inspired them so much in their own, not only spiritual lives, but also material life. He's spoken in Fortune 500 companies like Microsoft, Intel, Cisco. He's preached in universities like MIT. So many of such people, intellectuals, have come, they have been inspired by Maharaj.
Enough.
He's always told me to stop, so I'm going to stop here. But one interesting thing that I must tell you about Maharaj, since the youth are here, you will see that Maharaj is from the renounced order, right? So he's a sannyasi, and you'll always find that those who take up to the renounced order, usually they have achieved everything materially in life before they take up this order. Maharaj was actually going to become a doctor. He was admitted in the school of medicine, but he decided that rather than just treating people's bodies, he wanted to treat their soul, he wanted to treat their mind. So from the beginning, Maharaj always had this very renounced temperament, and he is here with us today. We're very fortunate to have Maharaj, and without further ado, I will hand over the mic to Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, we have a bouquet for Maharaj. Maharaj, before we start,
Thank you.
present it to you. A round of applause for Maharaj.
It's a little difficult not knowing the audience, how to speak, how to begin and carry forward not knowing the audience. I was told that there's a bit of a mix. Some persons a little familiar, some persons not familiar. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So where does the title come from? Who am I? One inspiration, there were a few. One inspiration came from, there's a little, way back when in 1971, 71, a few years ago, Prabhupada was interviewed in New York City by the New York Post. It was a recorded interview. It would get broadcast by radio, I guess. And the interviewer started by saying, Swamiji, you've come to America. you must have some message. What's that message you came to America to convey? And Prabhupada's answer was, to know who you are. And that's all he said. So the reporter said, to know who you are. And Prabhupada said it again, to know who you are. And it may seem like pretty elementary, but when you start unpacking the who are you, who am I, it becomes profound. I can say, because I'm going to be asked this question anyway, I'll anticipate, how did I get started on this whole thing? So without all the autobiography part, there was a stage in my undergraduate life where three things. I became convinced there's a higher reality, something more than this, something. Second, I don't know what it is. Third, I want to know what it is. Inquisitive. Jigyasu in Sanskrit language. Brahma Jigyasu, achieving the human form of life. It's time to inquire into the nature of that which is the source of everything, or who am I? Where I'm part of that something. What is that something we're part of? So we're calling this embarking on a journey of self-discovery. A nice way to begin, and I hope the technology cooperates. There's a little recording. It's like 8 minutes long, very short. It's and you see the subtitle, Persistence of Identity. It's from the ship Theseus is the story. You heard of Theseus before? Greek philosopher. Ship of Theseus. Let's go over here.
Throughout the history of mankind, three little words have sent poets to the blank page, philosophers to the agora, and seekers to the oracles. Who am I? From the ancient Greek aphorism inscribed on a temple of Apollo, know thyself, to the Who's Rock anthem, Who Are You? Philosophers, psychologists, academics, scientists, artists, theologians, and politicians have all tackled the subject of identity. Their hypotheses are widely varied and lack significant consensus. These are smart, creative people, so what's so hard about coming up with the right answer? One challenge certainly lies with the complex concept of the persistence of identity. Which you is who? The person you are today, 5 years ago, who you'll be in 50 years? And when is am? This week? Today? This hour? This second? And which aspect of you is I? Are you your physical body, your thoughts and feelings, your actions? These layers of abstract logic are tricky to navigate, and so it's probably fitting that to demonstrate the complexity, the Greek historian Plutarch used the story of a ship. How are you I? As the tale goes, Theseus, the mythical founder-king of Athens, single-handedly slayed the evil Minotaur at Crete, then returned home on a ship. To honor this heroic feat, for 1,000 years, Athenians painstakingly maintained his ship in the harbor, and annually reenacted his voyage. Whenever a part of the ship was worn or damaged, it was replaced with an identical piece of the same material, until at some point, no original parts remained. Plutarch noted the ship of Theseus was an example of the philosophical paradox revolving around the persistence of identity. How can every single part of something be replaced, yet it still remains the same thing? Let's imagine there are two ships. The ship that Theseus docked in Athens, ship A, and the ship sailed by the Athenians 1,000 years later, ship B. Very simply, our question is this: does A equal B? Some would say that for 1,000 years there has been only one ship of Theseus, and because the changes made to it happened gradually, it never at any point in time stopped being the legendary ship. Though they have absolutely no parts in common, the two ships are numerically identical, meaning one and the same. So A equals B. However, others could argue that Theseus never set foot on ship B, and his presence on the ship is an essential qualitative property of the ship of Theseus. It cannot survive without him. So, though the two ships are numerically identical, they are not qualitatively identical. Thus, A does not equal B. But what happens when we consider this twist? What if, as each piece of the original ship was cast off, somebody collected them all and rebuilt the entire original ship? When it was finished, undeniably, two physical ships would exist, the one that's docked in Athens and the one in some guy's backyard. Each could lay claim to the title, the Ship of Theseus, but only one could actually be the real thing. So which one is it? And more importantly, what does this have to do with you? Like the Ship of Theseus, you are a collection of constantly changing parts. Your physical body, mind, emotions, circumstances, and even your quirks, always changing, but still, in an amazing and sometimes illogical way, you stay the same too. This is one of the reasons that the question, who am I, is so complex. And in order to answer, like so many great minds before you, you must be willing to dive into the bottomless ocean of philosophical paradox. Or maybe you could just answer, I am a legendary hero sailing a powerful ship on an epic journey. That could work too.
Last summer, I was in Beijing, and somebody that has some technology skills, they put subtitles and everything so they could hear the guy speaking in English, but they could read it in Chinese, so they followed the whole thing. And I was asked a question at the end. What do I think about the ship of Theseus? And I asked, did you hear this story before? She said, yes. And I said, where'd you... Okay. Where did you hear it before? She said, philosophy class. I was really surprised, because Chinese are very proud of Chinese. And they have lots of philosophy, they have lots of philosophers, but somehow in a philosophy class in Beijing, they studied the ship of Theseus. So she wanted to know what was my take on it. You know, essentially it's the persistence of identity question. So from Bhagavad Gita, this persistence of identity is at the center, it's the spiritual self. And surrounding or enclosing or covering the self, there's body, mind, and intelligence. The mind and intelligence, there's subtle bodies, part of the subtle body, and there's the gross body. And they're coverings of the true self inside. And to discover that persistence of identity thing, that requires some introspection, because if we're just gazing outside, we'll see stuff. And as I started, my questioning was, there's got to be something more than stuff. There is something more. What it is exactly, I want to find out. there's a nice verse amongst many nice verses in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna is stating there's kind of a hierarchy. The Indriya, the self. Now, the self has covering, so we can say, I have a body, but just grammatically, you have something, then you're the owner of that something. There's the something, and then there's the owner of that something. So the something that owns the body is me. A little graphic to say the same thing. Here's a lady polishing a cage. And she's so immersed in polishing the cage, she's neglecting the bird inside. The bird croaks because the purpose of the cage is for the bird. And they're different. So sometimes Prabhupada used the language, this is a cage polishing civilization, where so much attention to the external and insufficient attention to the force of life or the true self or the identity of who we really are within. Some of you, because you're involved in medical profession, you're probably aware of out-of-body experiences, because I was on that path myself at some time. I became interested when I started to read. The first book that I read was by a heart surgeon, Dr. Michael Sabam from Emory University, Emory's prestigious university in America, in Atlanta. And in the book, he writes about his interviewing a patient after heart surgery where there was cardiac arrest. And cardiac arrest means the heart stops. When the heart stops, blood doesn't go to the brain, and it registers on little meters. The EKG shows the brain's dead. And they have a procedure. The procedure is, as it's depicted in this painting, they bring electrodes or some kind of something to stimulate or act as if the heart is working, and it stimulates the heart to work, and sometimes the patient revives. But during that time that the patient is in cardiac arrest, the electrochemical events in the brain aren't happening because blood isn't going to the brain. The EKG is flat and the heart stopped beating both. So they pulled out the electrodes and the person revived their heartbeat, natural heartbeat. The surgery continued, the man survived. Dr. Sabam went to meet the patient afterwards. Good doctor, how are you feeling? How's it going? And the patient reported what you see in the painting. He said, during this cardiac arrest, what I experienced was the nurse said this, the doctor did that, the procedure, He remembered everything. And the doctor said, how did you remember everything? How did you perceive everything? He said, I was floating above the table. And the doctor was thinking, what? Because the normal conception is consciousness is but an electrochemical event in the brain. When electrical chemical events stop and the blood stops going to the brain, both, then the person's clinically dead. Or if consciousness is electrochemical events in the brain, then how do you explain this? So he wanted an answer. So he started asking around the hospital, and other cardiologists had similar experience, not identical. And he researched this possibility, that possibility, the other possibility. He writes this in the book, and he gathered some data that said different events from different cardiologists. Something happened. Okay. And he came to the conclusion that, as much as I'm not so comfortable making this statement, it seems that consciousness is something other than the brain. And it's the consciousness is separate from the physical body. So he didn't like say a spiritual message, but he indirectly said, I can't find any other plausible answer than consciousness is something other than the body. And there was details and memory, visual acuity and memory retention, even during that brain dead state. So it says something about the seat of consciousness is other than the body, or the consciousness is other than electrical chemical events in the brain. So I got interested, so I started reading a couple of other books. And one of the other books that I particularly found amazing was on the other side of the country, the University of Washington, Dr. Kimberly Clark Sharp wrote a book on the same thing. And she described it a little differently. It's called Out-of-Body Experience, OBE. So what she describes is similar thing, cardiac arrest during surgery, and they did the procedure and the person saw the whole thing. But in addition to seeing the whole thing, the person said that they floated across the ceiling, they went out the window and up 2 or 3 floors, I forget, and found themselves looking inside the janitor's closet up above. And Dr. Kimberly Clark Sharp is saying, what? So she went and found the janitor that used that closet. He said, no way, I keep a key. This is a hospital. I keep a key. This is locked all the time. And what the person saw through the window outside was exactly how everything was put inside. And the person said on the little ledge above the window that had a pair of sneakers. You can't see what's on the ledge from the inside. You have to see from the outside. And the pair of sneakers had a rip and on the toe and 2 different color shoelaces. Sure enough, from above you could see there was the ledge and there was the shoes, sneakers with the rip and 2 different shoelaces. And so she was like, same thing, what's this? And similar, not identical, but she consulted, and others had other patients that had expressed out-of-body experiences, not the same as this one that was her patient. So why am I going through all this? Consciousness, the seat of consciousness is not the body. The seat of consciousness functions whether the body functions or doesn't function. Consciousness, we're getting to that in a moment now. Consciousness is according to the Vedic text, is a symptom of the soul. And as light radiates in an outward direction, consciousness also is conscious, centered in the body, but it goes out beyond the body, and it can perceive, hear, etc. Input through the senses, the indriyas, of information elsewhere. I remember as a young fellow hearing Prabhupada say something that I found puzzling and fascinating. The living entity is both conscious and consciousness. Say it again. Living entity is both conscious and consciousness. So I thought, that's cool. What does it mean? And then I came across something from the Upanishads that says that just like a lamp, depicted here, lights up pots and plates, so similarly the living entity allows consciousness of living entity, allows one to perceive that which lies outside the body, because consciousness extends, like luminosity or consciousness extends. So the soul is both conscious and consciousness. This is the who am I topic. And according to Vedic text, the soul has a well-established eternal relationship with the Supreme Soul. And it's possible to have a soul-to-soul relationship through the medium of the Super Soul. So here's one Chinese fellow, and looks a little older, got a little beard, and he's smoking a pipe with something in the pipe. Who knows what that is? And he has a friend. They have similar, they're same background, they both have little beards, but there's other similarities besides their bodies. They both have a soul. Individual soul is different, not identical. It's individual. And both of them have the same identical Supreme Soul, the Paramatma within. And a soul-to-soul relationship, now this is Vedic understanding, the soul-to-soul relationship is possible through the medium of Super Soul. We'll discuss Super Soul a little bit later. For now, you can see a light graphic. So here's a graphic that shows an egg, and there's light from the inside of the egg shell going outside. That's consciousness, is the luminosity, or it's within, but it also extends beyond. And higher consciousness is when consciousness can expand and the luminous, illuminating feature of the soul becomes brighter. And the state of liberation is where there's detachment from the body. It doesn't have to be an out-of-body experience, it doesn't have to be death, it doesn't have to be, it can be the state of consciousness where my identity is who I really am. It's the who am I topic. Nice philosophy. And then there's, how we regularly function. How we regularly function is like a machine. Yantra rudhani maya in the Sanskrit language of Bhagavad Gita. Yantra means machine. To have a machine work, it has to have an operator. You can have a nice machine. It's a nice computer or a car or an airplane or something. Without an operator, it just sits there because you have to have an operator. And the distinction is the distinction of consciousness. When I started getting into this, it's like maybe 30 years ago, younger brahmachari, I actually made a light machine. And it was pretty big. Technology was simple. So I just had a little printer, and then on the top was a button. It was kind of a plexiglass. You could see through it. And there was a little press a button, and the light would shine on the machine, and then the machine would print out, just like you see here. I see a red light. So you can make a machine that says or tells you on a little tape, I see a red light. Where's the experience of consciously seeing the red light? Mechanical response isn't the same as the seat of consciousness. Behavior and perception are not the same exactly as consciousness. So here's a little example. One scientist, I don't know that fellow's name, he analyzed the makeup, the constituents of the body, and this is what he found. Enough iron in an average body to make 6 small nails, carbon to make 900 pencils, that's a lot of pencils, sugar to sweeten 10 cups of coffee, potassium to fire a toy cannon, and some small amounts of lime and fat to make 7 bars of soap, phosphorus to make 20 matchboxes, water to fill a 10-gallon tank, and miscellaneous trace elements. You put all those together, and you can buy it in a marketplace, and it'll cost you around $20 for the elements that make up the body. And is that what we are? Just a bag of chemicals worth less than $20. Or when a BMW gets smashed and is valued at $50,000, which is more valuable, the $50,000 BMW or a $20 friend? So again, I like graphics. This is us with our back to life. On the left side is birth, and the right side is death, and in between is what we're going to do with our life. So the question, who am I, has everything to do with what goes in that space. Sometimes we get too busy to ask basic questions. I did it for a long time. I asked questions when I was a little kid. Won't go into it. Didn't get any answers. I got too busy being successful. So I just stopped asking those questions. A little later on, about 20 years later, I started asking those questions again. Maybe 15 years later. Who am I? What's this higher reality thing that I know exists? Am I truly happy? Once I started asking fundamental questions, there was a long list. The list started to grow quickly. What's my goal in life? Not just career goal, but what's the ultimate goal? What's human life meant for? Where do I go after this life? These are the types of questions that naturally arise when one begins reading Bhagavad Gita. Probably a number of you are familiar with Bhagavad Gita. Some of you are living by Bhagavad Gita. And just to put one more little twist on this, it's not a new question, as this ship of Theseus story says. Long, long ago, people were asking that question. Here it is in Bengali. This is a painting of a very, very learned Brahmana named Sanatana Goswami, and he's taking shelter of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And as learned and wise, he was prime minister of then half of India under the Nawab Hussain Shah's rule. He took a government post, but here he is, doing all these capable things, not knowing who he is. That's not a good position to be in. I mean, a very uncomfortable position to be in. So, Keami, who am I? Kene Amaya Jara Tapatrai, or Tapatrai. Why am I always subjected to these threefold miseries of material life? If I'm spirit soul, how did I get here? What do I do about being here? What's it all about? Basic questions. And at least in the course of my moving about here and there and looking for answers to such questions, I found Bhagavad Gita and the rendering of Bhagavad Gita as being especially valuable. Little story, anecdotal. In my senior year of undergraduate study, I had a philosophy course, and the professor was a Taoist. I didn't know anything about Taoism. I found out later what Taoism is. He was a Taoist. And we developed a friendship outside of class. So we would do things together. He took me to the pottery room and explained to me how by making pots on a potter's wheel, it helped him center himself, because you just take this glob of clay, put it on the wheel, spin the wheel. And to make the pot, you have to center the clay on the wheel. So that act of centering the clay and then shaping the clay to make a pot was an act of creation, but it was a philosophical experience for him. He taught me stuff like that. And then from time to time, he would read me poetry that he had written and explain it. So he was a kind of like a classical, teacher, a real teacher, very personable individual. I learned a lot from him. And in the course of time, he gave me a copy of Bhagavad Gita. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't pronounce it. I didn't know anything about anything. And so but I liked him, so I was carrying the book around with me. And as I was carrying the book around with me, another friend of mine had a copy. He said, "Oh, I have one like that, but it's a different version, so here, take mine." So now I have 2 Bhagavad Gitas. And I thought, if there's 2, maybe there's more. So I went to the library to 5 additional translations of Bhagavad Gita, checked them all out. I read all 7, and I came to 2 conclusions. It's not a book of poetry, and I don't understand it. Time passed. Version number 8. Prabhupada's version. I didn't know who Prabhupada was. I didn't know anything about anything. I was just inquisitive. I want to know. And I started reading version number 8, and it was really easy to understand. I was puzzled. Why is this easy to understand? The other ones I couldn't understand. But I kept reading it because I liked it. And then a little light went on that helped me understand why it was easy to understand, because it's this Bhagavad Gita is descending knowledge. It's not ascending knowledge. It's not take a flashlight and look for the sun. That's not how you find the sun. The sun is self-luminous. So descending knowledge is the way to understand Bhagavad Gita. And in course of time, I had the opportunity to get more association with Prabhupada and became, gave my life to that pursuit of the who am I question, and then everything else that follows behind that. And finally, this is the last slide. The chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is an essential part of the purification that helps one enter into the mysteries of spirituality or Bhagavad Gita, or understanding the distinction between the gross body, subtle body, and the true self. Conceptually, okay. Experientially, that's another thing. So, Hare Krishna mantra helps bring one to the position where one can directly experience who we are, and then keeps going from there. Besides that little skinny guy, the soul that you saw the image of. So that's our topic for this evening. Pretty simple. See if there's some discussion. Okay, Ami, who am I?
Any questions?
Yeah, it takes a while. My experience is just be patient. And the first question takes some time, then it's like popcorn. The next one. You here in the center, you know each other? Yes? Okay. Your fellow students. Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Rishabh from his friends.
Okay.
That's what students medical college.
Yes.
Very well.
Yes. I got clued in, that's why I asked the question. It was a little rhetorical, but social. Please. It's,
Maharaj, one thing about this who am I, even beyond understanding from a scientific perspective, on the practical level, we feel that sometimes, as you said, we get too busy, we get too much attached to designations.
it was attached to what?
Designations.
Designation.
So when someone asks us, who are you? We go by, I come from a certain, I belong to this family, I belong to this nation. So we become very attached. So on the practical field, Maharaj, you mentioned about introspection, but in now busy life, getting attached to designations, how do we cross this overwhelming pursuit to become introspective and ask such?
First, a little comment. Your speech sounds very much like Devaki Nandan's speech. It's maybe the Singaporean accent or something. Sounds, if you know, huh?
You people have to.
If I didn't see your face, I just heard the voice, I could think, Devaki Nandan. Okay, that's just fun. Take your question and step back 10 giant steps. Why creation? I was attending a Rath Yatra once, and it was because they know I go to China. They introduced me to a Chinese lady. And the Chinese lady said, I have just one question. Why creation? I mean, it relates to your question, I'll explain. Because we wanted it. Could you explain that, please? Because we wanted it? Yes. The original consciousness of the living entity is not enjoying separately from that which is the source of all happiness. However, because we have free will, we can misuse free will. And when we misuse free will, then we desire happiness separate from the source of all happiness, Ananda. Anandamayo Vyasa, the source of all Ananda. There's no good reason, it's dumb, but when we misuse free will, then we become covered by ignorance so that we can try to become enjoyers of something where there isn't enjoyment. Because there is enjoyment, but it's not in relation to where there isn't enjoyment. So coverings are provided so living entities can go chase the carrot, trying to find happiness apart from the source of all happiness. And that's material life. And now focusing on your question, in material life, according to Bhagavad Gita, there's 3 modes of nature, and 3 times 3 times 3, so it makes diversity of coverings. Just like 3 primary colors you can make any color. People who know the science know how to do that. So all the varieties of coverings have to do with the desire to be a separate enjoyer. And so back to your question, how to become introspective instead of chasing the carrot or finding happiness in the course of fruitive activity. No, circumstances can help. Part of the reason for why creation is we learn a lesson. There isn't really suffering in the material world. It's not a place meant for suffering. A prison is not a place for happiness. A desert is not a place where there's water. Material existence is not a place for happiness. So there's a prompt that can help us become introspective when the misery that goes along with the expectation of happiness gives us a prompt. There isn't happiness over here. And then we can start to become, well, then what's happiness? And how do I find it? I want it. We all want happiness because that's our nature. We're happy. We're part of the supreme happy. It's our nature. But we're not finding, so it's a prompt for introspection is the built-in feature of creation that says this isn't the place of happiness. So what's my options? That's a prompt for introspection. There's something similar, not exactly the same, but similar, and that's the modes of nature. So the more that one can be in the mode of goodness, yesterday at NUS, there was some discussion on overcoming negative emotions. So there's like one of the slides was a pyramid, and there's the darker, the passionate, and the elevated mode of goodness. Emotions. So the more one lives one's life in goodness, then there's higher emotions. And to have those higher emotions, it may take you away from the kick in the seat of the pants that says that there isn't so much suffering here. I'm living in goodness. But an introspective person is both. They're in this higher mode of nature, mode of goodness type of lifestyle. What's a mode of goodness type of lifestyle? Eating habits, what you do with your ear, what you do with your eyes, what you do with your senses, towards light. And then when there's light, it's same as Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Nirodha Chitta Vritti, where the swirlings of the mind subside. So some persons, they're not exactly introspective, but some persons like the feeling of doing yoga asanas. They feel better. You feel lighter. You feel something different. And when that's according to Patanjali, I'm giving a long answer to a simple question, but the long answer includes when you have a practice that brings the swirlings of the mind, chitta vritti, swirlings of the mind like water in the ocean, and it brings it to a calm position, then you can be more introspective. So some people start to become introspective just by good habits, becoming more conscious about their eating, more conscious about their speaking. Mode of goodness. Right in Bhagavad Gita, speech in the mode of goodness, speech in the mode of passion, speech in the mode of goodness. So they select from the menu. That kind of speech is better. This kind of eating is better. These kind of lifestyle habits are better. And that prompts being introspective. It's conducive. So a mode of goodness lifestyle helps be introspective. And the more you go in that direction, the more likely you'll be introspective. The more you're into passion, striving, achieving, working hard, getting that carrot, there's no time to be introspective. And then the misery that comes that when the expectation isn't met, then there's the darker mode. So, cultivation of the mode of goodness, there's more verses in Bhagavad Gita about the modes of nature than any other topic, because it's important. Cultivation of the mode of goodness, good association with people who have their lights on, as opposed to people that are just chasing the carrot. So good association helps. It's significant. Having wisdom literature to access and taking the time to read it because it's good. It's like brushing your teeth. You brush your teeth because it's just hygiene. And you read wisdom literature because I don't want to be dull. I want to be move in the direction of wisdom and light. So habits like that help promote introspection. And then when the unexpected, this was our topic last night, reversals in life or circumstances that are unexpected and create misfortune, it happens. You have much more resilience. You can respond differently, so you can keep moving in, towards light. That's this introspection principle. I've over-answered your question, but that's okay. And it's easier to say those things and then doing those things is another thing. How are we doing? Anyone? Yes.
Someone is like already successful, doing well in life, and has all happiness. Why should they go for this to introspect? Who am I?
Wait a while.
Material world, like Artha is asking, material world is successful.
Yeah, because, and I'm saying the material success, the wheel of time turns. Good fortune becomes ill fortune. How? You can't predict. But does it? You can predict. It's just, wait a while. Good fortune can easily become misfortune. Just a turn of the wheel of time. I have this problem being a visual. You look at a kaleidoscope. You're looking at the kaleidoscope. It looks like this is success. A little turn of the kaleidoscope completely changes. And then different people have different ways of responding to that turn of the kaleidoscope, where the good fortune becomes ill fortune, becomes good fortune, becomes ill fortune. Wise people don't consider this in itself is good fortune. I'm going to tell a little story. It's a nice story. It's called the Chinese farmer's story. Anybody know the Chinese? Okay. Once upon a time, there was a Chinese farmer. And the Chinese farmer had the local village people come to him and say, "Oh, you're so fortunate you have a horse. Because you have a horse, you can plow your field. You don't have to do all the labor we do because you've got a horse." And the Chinese farmer said, "Good fortune, ill fortune, who can say?" Some time passed. The horse ran away. So the villagers came and said, "Oh, what misfortune, the horse ran away. Now you have to plow your field like the rest of us." And he said, "Good fortune, ill fortune, who can say?" Some time passed. The horse came back. And not only the horse came back, but a number of wild horses came back with the horse. And so the villagers said, "Wow, good fortune. Now you have your own horse. There's so many other horses. You can plow your fields so easily." The man was a Taoist. He said, "Good fortune, ill fortune, who can say?" Some time passed. His son, trying to train the wild horses, fell off the horse and broke his leg. The villagers came and said, "Oh, what ill fortune, what misfortune, your son broke his leg." And he said, "Good fortune, ill fortune, who can say?" Some time passed. China declared war. There was a conscription act. All able-bodied men between this age and that age had to join the army. Because his son had a broken leg, he didn't have to join the army. Villagers came, said to the farmer, "Oh, what good fortune, your son doesn't have to go to war." And he said, you know what he said? So the lens that you look at something through may look like good fortune, but you never, wait a while. Good fortune can, like that, become misfortune. And then vice versa. So if happiness is defined by have and have not, that's not a very intelligent standard of happiness. Those that have, they want more. And then when they have what they lose, they lament. And so forth and so on. And in the end, it's all, now you see it, now you don't. It's all taken from you, whatever it is, that happiness, the objects from which you're deriving happiness, poof. It's ephemeral. It's will o' the wisp. It's phantasmagoria. It's not what real happiness is. So those who are experiencing haves as opposed to have-nots, there's a tendency to become indulgent in the have. It's the same reason for why creation, because we wanted it. So you get it, now you become the enjoyer of the thing you got until it's gone. Or till the kaleidoscope moves. The picture is a little different. Something. Or 10 somethings. So where's the place of shelter? Or what's real happiness? That's a good question. And that's what the who am I question leads to. I'm spirit soul, I'm part of something that's much bigger than me. I want to be connected to that something that's much bigger than me. And much bigger than me happens to be the reservoir of all happiness. Let me make that connection, that's yoga, with the Supreme. Through loving relationships with the Supreme. Whether I have or have not. Whether it's this or that, or the other circumstance of life. Just like tonight, I mean, we had a plan and the kaleidoscope moved, and so we're up here instead of down there. Because who needs loud disco music? To have a discussion like this. Anything else? Yes.
You talked about exploiting mind.
Yeah.
And in mind, you have so much in your hand, in the phone and the information that you see. People live so much away from themselves. Right?
Yes.
What is one of the things that you would suggest one should do to just calm down and bring the senses under control? It is what things is born.
Does it work? It works. It's not a silver bullet, because even when chanting, I can be, distracted. So then there's a qualitative, but you're asking one or two simple things. This is it's not difficult. The difficulty is not making the sound. The difficulty is being attentive. Because tendency is distraction. Turn your phone off when you're doing this and go to a quiet place where it's no disco. I mean, I went to an Ayurvedic clinic in January. I'm never going back there again. The clinic was great, but in the same neighborhood, there was a Shiva temple, and right during Brahma Muhurta hour, they blasted loud music. And I asked them, can you turn it down? A few decibels, it went down, but it's like so loud. So go to a place that's minimal, as far as possible, minimal distraction, phone off, and you do what Capable people do it. They focus one thing at a time. Vyavasayatmika bhakti ekeha krudanandana. Bhagavad Gita 241. You can look it up later. Ekeha. Ha, certainly. Ekeha krudanandana. Vyavasayatmika buddhi. Intelligence is very singular. Intelligence can direct the mind to something. Persons that don't have strong intelligence can't direct their mind. It's all over the place. Strong intelligence can direct them. And where does that strong intelligence come from? Super soul. So develop your relationship with super soul through this medium. And while chanting, it's just that. Just today, some devotees were asking, can you give us as a couple a very simple instruction we can follow? Yeah. Attentive and absorption in the mantra. No, it's not like, okay, good, that's it. It takes some work. But you're asking for one thing or two things. And, daily meditation on sacred sound. Doesn't have to be this mantra, but sound. And especially sounds that are of the absolute nature. Sounds that are of an absolute nature have the name of the absolute. And so that kind of meditation, sound meditation, every day, back to Patanjali. Three things. Hit by definition. Yoga is that which brings down the swirls of the mind, which is what your question is. So then, what are the symptoms? Three. Every day, for an extended period of time, there's Sanskrit terms, of course, for all these, and it's something that you have confidence is going to take you to a good place. Three things. Every day, doesn't have to be big, but every day, like brush your teeth, every day, and for an extended period of time, not just 1 day, 2 days, an extended period of time, with faith. And that's a good beginning. Here's another one. That which is something that's doable for you, mode of goodness doable for you, your diet. Select things that promote goodness and stay away from things that do the other. Two things. Promote goodness. Transcendence as you offer everything to Krishna. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7. Patram pushpam palam toyam. Krishna identifies the thing that he will accept when offered with love. You make that which sustains the body. But at least, mode of goodness food. It means certain foods, they're not okay because they promote the other modes. It's a mode of goodness food. Two things. Diet and mantra. Every day. It's the elevator. Not just a staircase, it's an elevator. It goes quickly. You got something.
But like soul have desires, and these desires get contaminated with the mind, with the experience, what we go through. And so the decisions also what we make. So is it completely from mind, or is it what decisions are coming from like internal soul, or what decisions are mind?
Okay. Your question's a little muddy, but I think I understand what you're asking. That which is in alignment with what Krishna wants, that's spiritual. That which is not in alignment with what Krishna wants, that's influenced heavily by the modes of nature. So you want to do a litmus test? Is what I'm desiring and choosing is in alignment with Krishna's words, Krishna's message to me, then you have to know Bhagavad Gita. You have to know Bhagavad Gita, not the 7 translations that I read, but the, a descending knowledge type of Bhagavad Gita. So become familiar with that sound, and then you hold your light up to that light until they match. Is there alignment? If you're not sure, then you can't say for sure. And if you can't say for sure, chances are it's in the modes of nature. Not a guarantee, but chances are. That's the default position for conditioned souls. The mind is influenced by the modes of nature. Okay. Yes.
As a living being, we have this tendency of, when we have this trait that we need to survive, we need to exist. We call it a survival of fitness or struggle for existence. Now that definitely keeps us driving.
Yeah.
And that causes a lot of trauma. To make sure that there is some validity of us in the society, at work, and that keeps us go beyond the limits of success. If you're in the corporate world, if you can't grow, you will die. You can't maintain. That's the way we are taught in the corporate world. So the question Maharaj said is that with all these aspects of survival of fittest or need to exist, the corporate structure or capital structure is like how do we practice, how do we feel comforted, or how do we feel secure, and don't fall into that phase.
It's easy to fall into the rat race. So, you can describe it in many different ways. You did a good job so far. There's many ways you can easily fall into it. If you turn the light out, you can fall into it. If you slacken in your inquisitiveness, you get carried away. You turn the dimmer switch down, and there's darkness. Turn the dimmer switch up, there's light. So, how to not succumb is your question. There's the inquisitiveness is the starting point, and then sadhusanga comes next. I mean, it's just the steps of bhakti. Adar Shraddha Tata Sadhusanga. Bhajana Kriya. 1, 2, 3. So for those of you that don't know the Sanskrit terminology, the inquisitiveness or the faith, Adar Shraddha, preliminary faith, Adar Shraddha. There's a greater reality. That's me. I want to be there. Then sadhusanga, association with persons that are there or strongly on their way. That's how you say not succumb. You diminish either of those two, and then you're just going to get carried away. That's like the default mode. So then, I don't want to be in the default mode. I don't want to get carried away. I want to be a responsible something. And how do I be a responsible something and not get carried away with the passion and the ambition and all of that stuff? I mean, I have a saying that's very similar to what you said. It's in the corporate world. And my saying is, either you're progressing or regressing. There's no standing still. That's the spiritual principle. So how do I stay progressive spiritually? It's an initial desire, an asha, but not in relation to matter, in relation to truth, or reality, or spirituality, or, give it whatever the name somebody's like giving it. Higher reality. That was mine. There's a higher reality. So keep that light lit with sadhana and sadhusanga. Sadhusanga, bhajana, kriya. And then you protect it. Then, because bhajana, kriya, you're protected by bhakti. Bhakti will protect you from succumbing. Keep your bhakti light on. What does that mean? I want to know who I am. I want to live a life of who I am. So I have to receive, and having received, I have to give what I've received. Because that's part of our social obligation of having received a gift. We give the gift that we've received. Cultured people, mode of goodness people do that. They receive, they give charity. You give what you received, but you can't give what you haven't received. So it's sadhusanga. And bhajana kriya. And stay with it. And then you can excel in your career path. Fantastic. You're not, because for whom, what's the objective in excelling in your career? Generally speaking, it's the material. I want the honor, I want the prestige, it's the material, separate from Krishna. But if the want is, Krishna should be pleased. If I become a successful fill in the blank, then, and people see that I'm a devotee of Krishna, they'll be attracted to Krishna because they want to be successful in life. You can help people become successful by being successful devotee. And use it for Krishna. You don't have to be, a superstar. You have to be a big something. Just be a genuine something. That's very attractive. And protective. So you're protected from the rat race. The mode of pushings of the mode of passion. Accept the mode of goodness principles, be cautious about the mode of passion principles. Okay, I think we're done. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for hosting. And I brought with me some Mahaprasadam from Hong Kong temple. Yeah. Did you bring that? Or you brought the Vrindavan Prasadam? Which one did you bring? Okay. Okay, we ran out. Sorry. What happened?